Barcelona's incredible turnaround this year has to be attributed, at least in part, to Hansi Flick coming in and changing things around. But he didn't just change tactics. Hansi Flick is changing the entire culture at Barcelona, and that is what is making the biggest difference. We're going to talk about why that is next here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. Now, if you've watched this channel and my videos with any regularity over the years, first of all, thank you. But second of all, you know I've been very hard on Barcelona. And it's not because I'm anti-Barcelona or I'm a Real Madrid supporter or anything like that. I actually don't have any supporting affiliation to any La Liga clubs, at least not yet. But I don't like bad business, and Barcelona has been the epitome of bad business, the worst probably run big club in Europe for almost a decade now, dating back to all of the moves that led to them having to let Lionel Messi go to PSG years ago. So I hate bad business, and I hate bad business decisions as a businessman and football fan. That's what irks me the most, and Barcelona just continues to make them, which is why they have no money. And yet they sit atop the La Liga table by a pretty comfortable distance, and they're doing well in the Champions League, and you have to give credit to new manager Hansi Flick. But most of that credit is going to the tactics, the fact that he plays a completely different style of ball than what has been seen in Barcelona for years, and that's part of it. That's definitely part of it, and credit is definitely due there, but it's more than that. It's the culture change that he has brought in that was desperately needed in Barcelona, and I think that has made just as much, if not more, of an effect on the results that we're seeing this season as the actual tactics and the actual play. So we're going to get into all that here in a second, but before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get down in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts. What are you seeing on the pitch? Barcelona supporters, how you feeling about Hansi Flick now? I know we weren't crazy about him. You guys weren't real sold, but hey, it's working out pretty well. So get down in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. Now, before we get too far down the rabbit hole here, it is worth pointing out that Barcelona is in part having success this year because of the young talent that they have. And you look at a club and say, how do you do so well when you have no money and you couldn't spend out on the market very much? And then they got Dani Olmo, but he was the first big acquisition in a few years. They've really not been able to keep up spending-wise. And the way to compensate for that is to develop your own young talent. Lamine Yamal is already one of the best players in the world, and he's not even of legal drinking age, at least not here in the States. So that is the way to counteract that, and they have a lot of other young teenage players who are contributing at a really high level. So you have to note that, because that helps cover up for a lot of business decisions, a lot of bad decisions, a lot of blemishes on the transfer market. The Victor Roque situation and those sorts of things. So having a guy like Lamine Yamal and not having done a lot of the big contract negotiations where they're going to make a ton of money later on, they're young, they're cheaper, that makes up for a lot of blemishes. That said, Hansi Flick is doing a great job, right? And it's as much cultural as it is tactical. And I think Barcelona was the club in the most need of a cultural shift of any club in Europe, at least of the big clubs. Barcelona, for so many years, for decades, has been a very insulated club. They love their own. They want their own to come back and coach. That's who they want. You are a Barcelona man. And while I love and respect the culture, and they're hardly the only club that feels that way, Man United has a tendency of doing that. They want to bring back United men. And that's fine, but you're doing two things. One, you're limiting your pool of talent, and that coaching talent pool is just as important as the playing talent pool, right? So you're limiting who you're choosing from. It's not that Xavi was a bad manager, but couldn't they have found better? He was inexperienced when he took over, and so was he really the best man for that job, or was it because he was a Barcelona man? You have to think about those sorts of things. And they've always played this same sort of style of play. I don't want to pigeonhole it as tiki-taka, but that sort of possession-based, very fluid, very beautiful style of play. And they're not the only ones. That's a very prominent Spanish style. But we're seeing tactics shift throughout the world. And to generalize here, the German sort of gegenpressing, counter-attacking style of Jurgen Klopp, and others are using it more and more. It's making its way out of Germany on more and more examples and occasions, and it's working in part because so much of the rest of the world is trying to play this possession-based style, and I do think that the two really mesh well together. If you are going to face a club that wants to dominate possession, you let them, you hop on those mistakes, you counter-press the hell out of them, you take that direct approach and you attack and you score. And you're seeing Manchester City struggle with that right now. That has been their Achilles heel, and you're seeing more and more of these German coaches trying this elsewhere to varying degrees of success, but it's becoming much more prominent. And so I do think that deserves some of the credit. But Hansi Flick himself is part of the discussion here too, because you could have found other coaches that could have brought a similar style of play to Barcelona. But there's the man management. There's the person behind it. And not every one of those coaches is going to apply it with the same tactics and the same mentality. And I saw two examples recently of how you can feel the culture shifting in Barcelona and why it's a good thing. Hansi Flick is known as a taskmaster. He is a strict coach. He is a drill sergeant kind of guy. Now, he's not the only one. There's lots of managers like that. That always has a more positive spin when you're winning, right? Winning makes players tolerate that stuff a lot more than losing does. That is the first thing to annoy the players and kill the clubhouse and make a manager lose the dressing room when they start losing, is being that guy who is a painfully strict taskmaster. There's also a difference in how you do it. There are lots of taskmaster coaches who are also positive, and they hold their players accountable, but the players like them. There are also taskmaster coaches who are real jerks, and the players dislike them and don't like playing for them even when they're winning, but they tolerate it when they're winning. So Flick seems to be the better of those two versions. He seems to be a guy that the players genuinely like, but they know not to mess around with, and they know that he's going to hold them accountable. And I will also say that helps. It helps having a young team. He's going to be much more effective, holding players accountable when they're 19 than Robert Lewandowski, who seems like a perfectly accountable guy. I'm just saying as an example. But there was an example that came out recently of players saying that if you are late to a meeting, you will not play the next game. Well, that's going to work a lot better on a 17-year-old than it is on a guy like Lewandowski, right? Now, I hope Flick would have that rule across the board. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're late, you're not going to play if that's the rule. And it sounds like he does, and I think that's fantastic because that is a cultural thing that players embrace, particularly when they're winning, but it holds them accountable, and that is a cultural shift. I've also seen some comments from players about rotation. And, you're not in the lineup on a particular game. And the comments, the feedback from the players is, that's okay, I'm playing a ton. We're going to rotate, we have a busy schedule. You don't hear those things when the culture isn't good. When you have a bad culture, you hear murmurs, you hear rumblings, you hear complaints of, why am I not in the lineup? Oh, I'm being rotated out. But no, the culture is good. When the players comment on strict rules like if you're late for a meeting, you won't play, and say it's a good thing, you know you have a good coach with a good culture. When players rotate out, even if it's justified, I played 5 or 6 games in a row, and now I'm going to take a day off even though it's in the Champions League. When the culture's bad, the players go, I want to be playing in the Champions League. Why am I taking a day off? I want to be in the lineup. Did I lose my spot? Blah, blah, blah. When the culture's good, they go, that's fine. I'm playing a ton. Next man up, I'll rest this one. I'll be back on Saturday. The culture there, the mentality in the dressing room matters so much. And from all accounts, Hansi Flick's culture is fantastic. And that's new. Because under Xavi, there were those rumblings. There was discontent. You'd see the reports, and you can, I'm not in the locker room. Obviously, I'm in the United States, so I'm nowhere near Barcelona. But you can get a feel for it from the reports. You hear little rumblings. You see little rumors of discontent, and this player's unhappy about this, and this player's unhappy about this. I'm not seeing that from Barcelona. If that's happening and I'm not seeing it, get down in that comment section, paste some links in there from news reports, whatever you got. I have not seen that. I have seen all positive things. Now, that's easy when you're starting to run away with the league and you've only got 2 losses on the whole season. They've got, one Champions League blemish and 1 La Liga blemish. One of their 2 losses was because they got an early red card. They played down a man for the whole game. So they've been, pretty much as good as you can be so far this season. That always helps the culture. And that will be worth noting. If they hit some bumps in the road, and eventually they'll have some losses and they'll drop some points, and if they drop a few in a row and they hit a lull that lasts a couple weeks, keep an eye out for those reports and those comments coming from players and stuff they post on social media. And if you start to see that change, because that's a telltale sign, is does the culture hold up when the going gets tough? And it is inevitable that that will happen. But good teams, good clubs with good culture weather those storms and just see it through. And so far, everything I'm seeing from the Hansi Flick Barcelona dressing room has been positive. And that, I think, is as much, if not a more important change than the tactics. I'll give Hansi credit for the tactics too. He has changed the style of play. I think it works well in La Liga against that level of competition. I think he's got the players to pull it off. It seems like it's a great fit all around. But watch for those cultural little clues that you see and the positive comments that are coming out, even in the face of some minor adversity and some stories about, Flick being a taskmaster and all this stuff. They don't care. They don't care because they're winning, and they don't care because they respect the coach. And as long as that respect is there, he can get away with that strict sort of mentality as a coach. And so far, it's working. So Barcelona, for all their bad decisions, just goes to show you what a couple of young stars and a good coach can do to make up for 7 or 8 years of terrible financial decisions. And they are sitting atop of La Liga and competing in the Champions League. And it looks like they've got a good manager for years to come. I would love to get your comments, your thoughts on the Barcelona situation, on Hansi Flick, the play, the culture, the tactics, anything. Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel and check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.